All right, very exciting. Episode 7, the first episode of 2026 on I Care About Books, a booknotification.com podcast. I am Pear. I am joined tonight by 3 of my very favorite people: Graham McGaw, the founder of Book Notification; Vince Morales, who is our entertainment editor here at BN; and Angela Maxwell, who is librarian in Ottawa, and also my cousin. So glad to have you back, Ange. I know you were couple of our earlier episodes and timing just hasn't worked out, but you are back and we're so excited to have you. You have come up many times over the last several episodes because we keep talking about the Poisonwood Bible and how it was your pick.
It was great.
And how long it was.
It was great.
You guys, if you started a month before, then you would have been fine.
Tonight
we
are talking about Once There Were Wolves. This was a book that was selected by Vince last month, and it was a fantastic book. And when Graham and I were talking earlier today about how to pronounce Charlotte's last name, I said McGonaghy, but I think, Graham, you had a different pronunciation for me.
Yeah, with Scotland, it's more like the "ma" is in there. It's like McConaughey, like McConaughey, Charlotte McConaughey, like that.
McConaughey?
Yeah.
McConaughey, kind of like Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so just to, again, go over the way things work on this podcast, sometimes we use pirate language, so please excuse that if you are somebody who gets offended by swear words. And if you have not yet read this book, spoilers, this is a book podcast where we're going to examine the book in its entirety. So yes, there will be spoilers on the episode. And at the end, I will give my wonderful guests the opportunity to rank this book out of 10 bells. So that all being said, let's throw it over to Vince. He's the one who picked the book. Vince, tell me why you picked Once There Were Wolves.
I didn't really have a complicated reason for picking this. Her latest book, I don't know the title off the top of my head, but it's been very popular. It's probably her most popular to date. And then I was like, well, I don't want to read that everyone else is reading. Let's pick something older. And then the way that, Graham is Scottish, we all love wolves, I assume. I figured that would just be a good pick. Plus, it is right in my sweet spot, 320 pages. So,
Wild Dark Shore is the name of the new book. Wild Dark Shore. That's the new one that came out.
And Angela, you read Migrations, and you really enjoyed that book. Is that right? Or did you not enjoy that book so much?
I mean, it was okay. Like it was kind of middle of the road. This one was definitely better. And so I think that she's the type of author that grows over time. So I think that her craft is improving. And so that's why I put her next book on my wish list. So yes, I'm kind of opposite to Vince. I like reading what everybody else is reading because it keeps me involved in the conversation.
Graham, when we were first talking about this book, it was the opening line that took you right off guard. You caught your attention right away. Let's talk about that real quick. The opening line of this book, Graham, I'm going to give it to you to tell us about it.
The opening line is, I don't have my copy beside me, actually. Can you remind me what the opening line is? I know, it was so iconic that
it resonated with Graham so well he forgot it. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
I blocked it from my memory. That's how it was. Yeah.
I have the book in front of me. Okay. When we were 8, Dad cut me open from throat to stomach.
Yes, that is quite the line. And as soon as I read it, I actually stopped everything, took a picture, sent it to Cam as like, here's the opening line for Book Notifications, opening line of the day, because what can you say about a line like that, right? You're like immediately like, okay, this is hitting me right from the bat. This sums up the book in a way right off the bat. You're in for a wild ride basically, and it makes you immediately want to read more, because how could you not after the opening line, which is what a good opening line should do. It can stand out by itself.
Absolutely. So I'm going to throw it over to Angela. Angela, why don't you give us a synopsis of this book?
Okay, so the main character, Inti, has, I guess you call it a disease of mirror imaging. So she feels everything that is being done around her as long as she sees what's happening. And that's how the first line kind of relates back to she's not actually being cut open. But she has a twin sister, and their lives kind of go in parallel, and they live in the woods with their father half the time. They live in Australia with their mother the other half the time, and they're kind of growing up half wild. And one of them becomes sort of the city girl, and the other one becomes sort of the wild person, but they can't live apart, and so they choose to live in Alaska together because one of them is studying wolves, has a PhD, and so her goal is to rewild these wolves into Scotland. And so her sister comes with her, but her sister has had a traumatic event and has subsequently stopped speaking. And so it kind of goes through like flipping back and forth between them growing up together and them in their present state where they're trying to struggle through introducing these wolves into the wild where the population doesn't want them.
So Vince, with her having this mirror synesthesia, I think I'm saying that correctly. This becomes a theme throughout this entire book. So I heard that you really enjoyed this book. How did you feel that synesthesia continuously became a theme throughout every facet of the book and everything that really defined Inti's life?
Yeah, it definitely defined her. I was honestly worried at first when it was first introduced. It reminded me of like Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower. I don't know if anyone's read that, but there's a similar thing in that where it's like a little more sci-fi, but where I don't know. It wasn't my favorite part of that, but like in this, it's just more a part of like who she is. I think it doesn't like dominate the story, but it does stop her from doing things that she wants to do or you think that she might do. It's just a part of her, and just like the wolves in nature are like. I think it helps her to be just kind of the way that she is, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does. I found while I was reading the book, and I love this about a book that can make me do this, that I was, I'd go through a page and then I'd go, I'm like, oh, I was actually and it started when it was very quickly that Inti was taken by Duncan, the police chief in this town, because that happened very, very early in the book where I was expecting to read about her being a biologist working in the Scottish Highlands, getting involved with the wolves in the community and so on. And very quickly, like in the first few chapters, there was suddenly an introduction into this romantic counterpart to the story. And from there, I found throughout so much of the book that I was like raising an eyebrow, going, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Did you find that, Graham, while you were reading this book?
Yeah, definitely went at a fast pace. I don't think I've definitely read books where you do feel like they've cut a lot of things out. I didn't get that vibe with this. It did definitely move quite fast. You're right, that whole love interest thing, getting together that night, boom, boom, boom. That definitely was quite abrupt, and there was a fast pace to it, but I don't think there was. It never felt to me like they were missing things out. Like I've read but I did feel actually just Poisonwood Bible, for example, I did feel there was portions of that where it's like, oh, it just kind of jumped forward a bit in time and missed it. This one, I didn't feel like that at all, even though it did go at that pace. It felt like everything, the stories, the timeline still went natural, basically.
I agree that the timeline was fluid. I just meant that I was impressed that Charlotte was able to shock me so quickly, so often. Like there were twists and turns into the story that I was like, oh, she's into Duncan. Oh, now she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh, now, Stuart's dead. Like, I was really impressed that I kept being sort of surprised by the story. There's much to be said that a lot of it was predictable, but there's also much to be said that things kept popping up throughout the book that actually surprised me. How about you?
That's very true. You're right. There was it kept you on your toes basically all through it, and it also kept you hooked because, like, right from the beginning, you knew there was something going on with Aggie, but you didn't know what. And she was very good at keeping that from you So it's like, but giving you a little more reveals, and like you said, keep me on your toes as it's going and so on. So she did an excellent job of that, where a topic like this could have been boring, it wasn't. That's what I thought when it was first recommended. I'm like, oh, okay, but it wasn't boring at all. You're right, it kept surprising me. It kept, with all the little twists and turns in the story, it kept me hooked the entire way.
What do you think, Angela? Do you think that the story had enough themes kind of going on sort of simultaneously that kept the story moving forward? Like, I agree with you, Graham. Like, this had the potential to kind of go, well, I'm not super into nature necessarily, or this doesn't sort of interest me. Maybe this isn't a book for me. But in fact, there's so many themes going on that it kept the story moving along. What do you think, Ange?
Yeah, so one of the things I liked about it was the number of ways she could fit a different pattern onto the scenario. So the death of Stuart, I think, is the best example, where, she makes you believe that Duncan did it, and then she makes you believe that Lainey did it, and then she makes you believe the wolf did it, and then it turns out none of those things are true. But all of them fit, right? And so and I was telling this to Gary a little bit earlier that I'm a bit of a lazy reader. I'm not trying to figure out who did it. I just wait and let them tell me who did it. But I was willing to believe that Duncan did it, and I was willing to believe that Lainey did it, and I was willing to believe the wolf did it. So when she was out hunting the wolf, it never occurred to me like that she would have been doing that mistakenly, right? And so that to me was one of the parts that was interesting about it, is that usually in a whodunit mystery, when they keep changing who did it, you find that frustrating or annoying. But this one, I think, fit really well.
So what did you think, Vince? Now you've, recommended this book. You read this book now. Was it to the expectations that perhaps maybe you had heard, and why you recommended it at all? Like, do you think that it fit? And tell me what you thought of the story.
I thought it was just absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna have a very, very high rating later. But to like what you've been talking about, I think it's just, there's parts of it where it's just life comes at you fast. Like, she gets pregnant and she plans to not have the child and has to do something about that. And then she just is so busy with the wolves that she doesn't. And I don't think it's because she necessarily wants to keep it or anything like that, or maybe, but it's all just like, yeah, like, there's a part where when Duncan finally realizes, and she's like, I'm going to take care of it, it's like probably too late by that point. And it's just like, life comes at you fast. It's always coming at her. She has so much on her plate all the time, and she just is doing her best to balance it while doing this like very noble, very serious thing with the wolves, and that nobody wants her to do. It's just a lot of themes I really like, and a lot of character moments that I really enjoyed as well.
Well, there were, of course, in every great book, there are tropes. And so I'm going to ask each of you individually about a certain trope in the book and get your vibes off of it. I'm going to start with Graham, because Graham, you are from Scotland, and there was a lot of dialogue from some wonderful Scottish characters. So I'm going to ask you about maybe some Scottish tropes that you found inside this book, specifically geared around language. And did you find it like, oh, come on, or pretty accurate?
I felt it was pulled back a bit, actually. Like, there was a few terms like shite and stuff like that you saw, but I think they drastically pulled it back, especially that area. They could have got really, she could have got into like urban Welsh levels of language, She didn't. She pulled it back, threw in little bits of Scottish language every now and again. But no, I didn't notice it that much at all. It got to the point where a Scottish word like shite would be in there, and it would stand out to me, because I'm like, oh yeah, she's not been using that, so I didn't think she used that anywhere near as much as she could have, probably because, American audience and so on, so it makes sense.
I read lassie and laddie, and I mean, maybe they're just common words to you, Graham.
It could be, it's natural, right? It could be like, a lot of it is natural to me that I don't even think twice about it. There was only definitely a few, like, I could probably say there's like 15 or 20 words where I'm like, oh yeah, Scotland, like, other than that, no, I never noticed at all, but it could just be me.
Well, here's my second parter for you, Graham. So we have talked about this before on the podcast about using colorful language in a book. And how did you feel like in this book that Charlotte wove it in where it was necessary? Because there were some bombs in this book.
I said it before. I don't notice my book has swearing, and I'm being honest again. Legitimately, I remember shite. Obviously, I don't really remember the swearing. It's I grew up with that, so it's a natural thing as well for me. So I honestly don't notice it. You could tell me there was one swear word. You could tell me there was 1,000. I would believe you. I'm
Okay, well,
being straight up.
I'm going to try an experiment right now. Now, for those of you
Okay.
who are listening to this podcast, you won't be able to see what I'm doing, but I'm going to see if my guests tonight know what this means.
Oh yes, I do remember the sign language. That's right. There was a few.
What's the
Oh,
sign
yeah.
for?
I'm not gonna say.
That's for cunt.
it.
Aggie created that while she was creating her own version of ALS when they were kids. And their
Yeah.
mother uses this word to describe somebody who becomes heinous in his domestic partnerships and calls this person a cunt. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
Aggie comes up with a diamond shape in little sign language to use it. So I thought that was funny. Graham, it makes me laugh every time that you say you don't realize how much swearing is in a book, because this was a pretty heavy book for a lot of profanity, and I'm surprised you didn't notice it.
I did notice it in Erasure by Percival Everett, but that one was an easy one because the book was called Fuck. But this one, yeah, I did it's just everyday language to me with me and my kids.
All right, Angela, I'm going to throw it over to you. And we're talking about book tropes. We're sort of talking about this offline. As a woman, we were talking about that whole big portion where Inti gives birth in the wilderness as this like climatic moment, and how it had to be the way that it was based on this story. I'm going to throw it over to you to talk about that sort of part of the book and that trope that she became one with the wild.
Well, I think she took, taking this weak character who couldn't watch someone be injured to the extreme, where now she's an 8-month pregnant woman who's dragging a fully grown man into a car, and then she goes off into the woods, about to give birth, and then eventually gives birth next to a tree and pulls the baby out. And I mean, you can do the biting off the umbilical cord a bit better than I can, but I don't know if that's even possible to be done. I have no idea, but it just seemed a little bit over the top. And then I guess the part where it was just borderline for me, when she's freezing with the baby in the woods and the wolves are coming, and that the wolves aren't going to attack because that wouldn't make any sense in the context of the story. And you're like, if the wolves lie down next to her, this is going to be completely ridiculous. And sure enough, the wolves lie down next to her. And come on. And then she tried to save herself by saying maybe the wolves weren't real, just the same way her dad appeared there who wasn't real. So maybe the wolves were just her imagination and her trying to keep the baby alive with her own generation of warmth through what she's thinking about. But yes, she did take a few things to the extreme.
Well said. And I'm going to throw it over to Vince. When you were reading through this book, I'm going to ask you about the very generic tropes that sometimes pop up in popular books like this one. She finds a love interest. Oh, look at that love interest has deep, dark, scary past that, we now have to, pull apart those layers to get to who he is at his core and why he's become the way he's become. And, the sister who went through the traumatic event and now is going to be pulled through the ashes and come out on the other side based on the climax of this story. So just speaking to that, I mean, as a reader, is this the kind of stuff that, is great? And tropes are good, and it helps you find predictability in a book? Or did you find them, as Angela said, in some parts to be really at the extreme?
I don't think they're at the extreme. His backstory is I guess it's a little extreme, but it's not one you would expect, or one that's been repeated often. I guess I'll talk more about Inti's sister, which that part is very brutal and very but like but there's a character, their mother's a detective who investigates crimes against women often. And she says this stuff's predictable, and then Inti doesn't want to tell her mother about it because they are predictable. So it's almost her tackling, like, yes, this is a trope, but it's a trope for a reason, because it like happens all the time, and it's usually like the person you love doing it to you, and like that's bad, obviously. And I don't think that she actually does really get pulled through the fire. I mean, she doesn't have a super happy ending, her sister, but I don't know. I think it works for me as a whole, so I think that's more what I'm concentrated on.
Well, and that works, right? I mean, there's a reason they call it a trope. It's because it is something that is familiar and makes readers want to read them, because we become very familiarized with these sort of nuances that characters may end up developing throughout a story, and that's why authors rely on them, right? So, I mean, it's all dependent on whether or not you thought she went too far with the tropes, or if they were just correct enough. Graham, I'm going to ask you, did you find Inti to be an unreliable narrator? Did you think that the way she told the story was exactly what happened? This is written in a first person. Did you find that reading through her story was really just Inti's truth, or perhaps maybe she was telling the truth?
I felt she was a reliable narrator. I felt I trusted her, and I felt, for example, when she questioned whether Aggie was even real, or if she was just imagining her. I felt that with the character, where I felt like she was asking herself that, it wasn't just something to mislead the reader or whatever. And if it had turned out that Aggie wasn't real, I would still not consider her unreliable because of her mindset to her and how she was conjuring her up, and I did believe her. So no, I thought she was like a great narrator generally throughout the entire thing. It was someone where I trusted her opinions, her thoughts on everything as things went, and I thought she was very. But the character's mindset was very open, so you could see in it. She wasn't hiding it. I never got that vibe she was hiding, right? Like even the story. Sometimes you get that with where authors hide things for later and it bothers you. But the whole Aggie, what happened to her deal, not been revealed till later, I didn't feel that was like that. Again, I felt like it was just an honest and, like leading up to it. And yeah, I completely trusted the narrator.
So, Angela, we've talked many times on this podcast about the books that your mom won't read. So I like to be able to, I don't want to say warn, because that's not the word I'm looking for, but I certainly like to, when I'm recommending a book, be able to be really honest about how this book reads and what kind of reader you may be. So when you were if you were going to suggest this book to somebody, given the themes, the description of the themes, because Charlotte McConaughey does not leave things to the imagination, how would you sum up the book? How would you describe it? What can readers should be ready for?
Yeah, my mom would not read this, but my mom can't handle a single swear word. And with the swearing in this book, I think the first time it happened was midway through. And so that's why it was jarring to me, because she didn't start out that way. And so then it was very impactful when she added it in. But there are a lot of themes that are disturbing in this book. Group rape, domestic abuse, a lot of murder and violent murder, if there's a type of murder that's not violent, but I mean with a knife rather than with a gun, because it's very personal. And it seemed like many of the characters, and Duncan made that point himself. He said everyone's capable of murder, and the author seemed to want to prove that throughout the story, that everybody could have, or in many cases did, murder someone. So his father murdered his mother, and then he murdered his father, and then Aggie murdered two people, and then and on and on and on, right? So of the main characters, many of them had been very touched by a close and personal murder, and so that I think would be something to warn readers about, that it's quite disturbing.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, because you're absolutely right. And I do think that it's important when people are reading a book for the first time that it can be a little jarring and it can be a little triggering. And so some of the themes in this book certainly I would say are a little triggering probably for some readers. So with all of that said, Vince, you know what? Graham and I talked about whether or not we were going to give it to you first, but I think Graham, I think we can let Vince rank this book out of 10 bells. I think we can let Vince do it first. What do you think?
I will let him this one time. Go
Let him
with
this
it.
one time.
His
Well,
choice.
Vince, you picked the book, so we're going to let you go ahead and rank this book out of 10 bells and why.
Well, I don't know if I was in the right headspace to be reading this. A lot of things that you are saying, that Angela's saying, I'm nodding my head, agreeing. Like, it is very violent. There's some very dark, nasty stuff in here. But it also, I think it's shielded in a way where it didn't gross me out. And it felt true to their lives, to their experiences. Like that the really nasty thing that Aggie's husband did, whatever it is, it's coming. It's coming. You like almost don't want them to get to that part where they tell you what happened. Like, you don't want it to happen, but when it happens, it's still nasty. It's still gross. It still makes you feel bad. But like, there's a tenderness between the twins. The twins, care about each other, and they shield each other from it, but they also shield like you as the reader. And then when Inti has her baby, I know that it did say it's tropey and it is maybe too much, but it works for me because there's parts of it that there's parts of this book that are foreshadowing, like when Inti saves the horse from Stuart. You just think like, Stuart's an asshole. She loves animals. This is just like a character moment. But then like when that horse ends up being like the hero of the story, like that just worked for me. I just didn't see that coming, even though I was almost expecting it. And then the mystery over who did all these murders. I did think in the back of my mind, Aggie. And then there was just multiple parts where I think you said it, where it's like, they convinced me, oh yeah, it was probably this other person. It was probably a wolf. And then like they convinced me it was a wolf, and then it was like, wait, it wasn't a wolf, it was Aggie. And it's like, well, that's what I thought, but they tricked me multiple times with her writing. One more thing I'll say, Angela, I did also read Migrations, and I feel like that was like a test run for this type of story. It's a lot of the same beats, a lot of the same things. And it's just done so much better. And I think that's why, in the end, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10.
Woo!
Ooh.
But she's getting into a groove. Her next book might be better. How will you rate this?
Yeah.
We're gonna have to change your whole rating scale.
We'll have to go back and change.
Yeah.
10 bells. Wow. All right. Graham, over to you. Out of 10 bells.
Okay, so first, quick story. So I'm not a smart man when it comes to world knowledge, national knowledge, local knowledge. I don't know much that, right? So books, I learn a lot from books, and I actually learned two big things from this book. When I was a kid, I grew up in Scotland. When I was a kid, 7 years old, I'd go to my grandparents' house every weekend, and behind their garden they had this big forest. And I, being a kid, I always wanted to go in it. And my grandparents would say to me, "No, you can't go in. You can't go in the forest." I'm like, "Why not? I want to go in the forest." They're like, "There's a pack of wolves in that forest, and like, wolves will kill you. They'll kill little boys and stuff." So I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I was scared shitless of the forest. So the two things I learned from reading this book that I didn't realize until last night is, one, wolves have been extinct in Scotland for over 300 years, and two, my grandparents are fucking liars. Because, well, I said, I'm not a knowledgeable person. They told me that up until yesterday. I thought wolves were roaming around Scotland. I go back there every year, and I go for runs near that forest, and I'm always looking just in case there's wolves. Now I know there's no wolves. So, yeah. That's it. Anyway, I would give it I'd actually the book. I thought like I said, I thought the subject was going to be boring. I thought her meta-synthesis was going to be off-putting. Ended up loving it. Again, the character, again, the ride up and down, all the twists, everything. The only one flaw I felt was Aggie going after Duncan and his dog. I thought that, even though she had issues, whatever, I felt that was just felt out of character for her. It felt like something that was unnecessary, and it just really sucked. You don't want to. I get like there was a lot of animal death in this book. Wolves are one thing, but I don't think the dog. I don't think that was necessary. So I will give it, because of that, a 9 out of 10. I did really like it, but that was a big flaw for me. Like just one thing that I couldn't forget.
9 is still really high, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, I said I found myself feeling for the wolves. Then I found myself hating the wolves. Like I kept going back and forth. Probably next podcast, I'll be wearing one of those lone wolf T-shirts that all the cool people wear. You'll see that. I'll be.
You'll be hungry like the wolf.
That's exactly it. You know it.
All right, Angela, over to you. What will you rate this book out of 10 bells?
Well, I do find that, it was an easy read in the sense that you wanted to continue to read it. You weren't looking forward to the end. And then it will stick with you. So I think that will increase the rating. There were a couple of moments that stretched credulity. And you were like, really, come on. And there were a couple of moments also that she missed having a very impactful moment. And I think the one that kind of disappointed me the most was when Inti confessed that she hadn't killed Gus. What Aggie should have said was, I know, because Inti can't kill people because she feels their pain. And so letting Aggie say, I know, would have solidified that connection that the two of them had. And so I was waiting for that moment to happen, and it didn't happen. I'm going to give it an 8. I did enjoy this book.
All right, 8 bells. And now for myself, I have to say that I usually gauge a book on whether or not I would recommend it. And I was talking to my daughter today. She's 25, and she is actually going through school to be a horticulturalist. So she's somebody that's very in tune with nature, loves to read, loves animals, and so on. And when I was talking to her, I was like, this is really you coded. Like, this has got you written all over it. And I think you would really enjoy this book. And in fact, she's coming to pick it up from my house next weekend. So when I am going to recommend a book to somebody, that's going to go up the ratings for me. So I'm going to give it an 8 because I would absolutely recommend it. And also because I want to reread different parts of it, because I thought there were so many different stories going on at one time that some of them I found super fascinating. The wolf part, I felt it to be really a metaphor. Like I know that the wolves were like this big, massive part of the book, but in fact, for me as a reader, I thought that it just acted really as a metaphor for Inti's entire life, being released out into the wild, see if she can thrive. Can she be away from the pack? And in this case, her sister, the way that her mother had always instructed her to be. Was she going to be able to break free? And could she do something to survive, even if it meant hurting herself? And that's what we saw then when she had her baby. So so there's different parts of this book that I want to reread because I thought the themes were really cool. So 8 for me, and I think this is a pretty high rating. I think this is probably one of the best books that we've had rated on this podcast. What do you think, Graham?
Yeah, actually, we've picked a lot of good books. This Slaughterhouse 5 in Asia, I think they're the top 3 books, and they're all pretty similar there. So I think this book club's pretty good at picking books, I gotta say.
All right. And with that being said, you've got next month's pick.
That's right. We're going to go from dead dogs, dead wolves, people getting buried, murders, throat slashed, to a Newbery-winning young adult mystery, which is set in 1970s New York, and it follows 12-year-old Miranda as she navigates shifting friendships and a series of cryptic notes that seem to predict the future and her own role in preventing a tragic death. It is When You Reach Me by Rebecca Stead.
Okay. Anybody read this book already?
Nope.
Not even you, Ange? I always count on you to be like, I've read it already. I got to read it soon.
I only
I'm not
read
allowed-
120 books a year.
Where did you
I'm not
find
allowed in
this
the young
book?
adult section.
Graham, where did you find this book? Like, where did it jump out to you to pick this for tonight?
I honestly cannot remember. I just was looking for something light and an easy read, because one thing we definitely want, as we talked about, we want to get to doing the podcast the first week of the month. So I was looking for something short, easy to read, not too jarring, you know. And I basically Googled opposite of Poisonwood Bible, and this showed up. So
I don't know. Readers should like to read long books.
I do love a long book, but I figured it was, like, so we can get back on a track with the podcast and make it first week of the month, something nice and short and easy. But I do love. I mean, look, I'm wearing a Stephen King t-shirt. I love long.
Yeah, his books are long, other than Misery, which was one of his best ones, actually. But
Well, we are due for a long book. So after we read Rebecca Steed for next month, we'll
then I
let
get
it
to pick.
again. And you guys wait, it'll be like War and Peace, and it'll be in Russian, and it'll be, yeah. But Angela, we'll let you have it for episode 9, I guess that'll be. For right now, though, we're going to sign off on episode 7 of Once There Were Wolves here on the I Care About Books podcast. Again, a huge thank you to Graham, Vince, and Angela for being a part of tonight. Don't forget to head on over to booknotification.com. That's where you're going to see some really great new books coming out, find some really great authors, track your reading. Of course, sign up, subscribe, and get notified. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.